All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As always, if you want to know when these things are going to take place, these YouTube live Q&As, just like and subscribe. We'd love to give you all more notice for when these are going to take place. We tried to give a couple days notice previously when we were doing these, but then we always run into the problem of the congressional schedule will change when votes are and things like that. We were actually planning on doing the live Q&A tonight, but we have so many votes going on today for something known as the National Defense Authorization Act. That's the major piece of legislation that occurs every year that basically funds everything that has anything to do with the military, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force, anything that has anything to do with that. We've been voting on it. People say members of Congress sit on their tail all day. We have literally been sitting on our keisters for the past 3 hours voting on amendments on the floor of the House. So my keister is actually sore from sitting down for the last several hours, and now I'm sitting down again. A couple of the highlights of craziness that I saw on the floor for amendments. There was a couple of things. Let's see. There was one amendment that would take your dollars, and it wouldn't just pay for educating U.S. service members on issues of transgenderism and things like that. It would actually pay for educating foreign service members on issues of transgender and things like that, so that when they are, training with U.S. service members, they can be up to date on that. What's another crazy amendment that I remember seeing? Here's another one. There is obviously all of these dollars come from we the people. Any dollar that's spent comes from we the people. So there is a program. It actually belongs under the State Department, so it shouldn't really be in this legislation, but they put it in there anyways. And it's to go out there and teach people Chinese languages, Mandarin, things like that, in order to help counter Chinese influence. It's a worthy goal, countering Chinese influence. But all of the dollars, even though it comes from the breadth of backgrounds of we the people, the dollars would only be allowed to go to historically minority colleges and universities, not to other schools for anybody else. It's like reverse discrimination that's going on there. They'll take the dollars from every background of we the people, but they'll only spend them at historically minority colleges and universities. That's a big problem. These things shouldn't take place. Those are just a couple of examples. Want to get into what's going on in the world today with some of the things. Number one thing I want to start with, lying in honor here in the House of Representatives. It is Herschel Woody Williams was his name. He was the last, he is no longer surviving. He was the last surviving World War II Medal of Honor recipient. And as he was the last, they did have him lie in honor when he passed. Just incredible story, something worth reading, a little piece of American history. He was on the island of Iwo Jima, and in the second day, that was the day that they were, raising the flags at Mount, how do you say that? Sarabuchi? I might be saying that incorrectly. I'm not saying that. But where you read the great story, Sarabachi, that's how you say that. Where you see the stories of them raising the flags at Iwo Jima. So he's serving on that day, and he's tasked with carrying a flamethrower. Now, as a service member, I'm going to say that takes some stones to carry around a tank of flammable materials on your back. He had to go down there and basically flamethrow into pillboxes. All of the support that he had was killed, and he still went charging forward, not just once, but something like 5 or 6 times to put that flamethrower into these pillboxes and destroy the enemies that were in his way. Just some very serious commitment above and beyond in combat. And so he was recognized today here in Congress. Getting to, and we're proud of him, proud of all of our World War II men and women that served, and even beyond that. It's a good opportunity to take this opportunity. Just thank you for your service. You put on a uniform, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Panama, Kosovo, Bosnia, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. I love you. I mean, I couldn't say it enough. You made me say, that's why I want to put on a uniform. That's all I want to be, is like one of those people that put on a uniform before me. That's the truth of it. So thank you for your service. So getting into what's going on in the country right now, talk about inflation. Number one, inflation report came out. We've been talking about this each and every week. Numbers I got in front of me: gas up 59.9% per gallon, electricity up 13.5%, groceries up about 12.5%. It puts families and parents in an impossible position. And inflation, people always go out there and say, oh, inflation is a tax. It is a tax. It's a tax most especially on those that are going out there and working every day, driving to work every day, have a family, have a fixed income. Huge tax on those individuals. It's actually worse than a tax, because at least with a tax, maybe you're getting a road out of something, or unfortunately with a tax, you may also get some ridiculously stupid study, like some government agencies studying how crack affects monkeys or something like that. And we actually, in my office, do quite a bit of work on trying to stop painful animal testing. That's a plug for a great bit of the work that we do. But that's the truth. Unfortunately, that's where your tax dollars go to sometimes. But with inflation, it's not even a tax. It is just your money getting burned away because of ridiculously stupid policies that are going on right now, like not supporting U.S. energy production, U.S. energy exploration, energy refinement, and something that makes everything in this country that much more expensive, because there's a truck in the middle of everything to get your groceries, your food, your products that you need from A to B, or yourself to and from work. And that is the biggest inflation driver that's going on right now, those energy prices. We're going to play a video here of just unfortunately, the way that this administration has their head dug in the sand. And I would say the administration knew that the inflation that was going on was not short term. It wasn't just going to last for a couple of weeks and then poof, it was going to disappear. They knew that this inflation was going to happen and get worse because of the policies that they were doing from day one. So let's play this video of Joe Biden having his head in the sand.
And by the way, talk of inflation, the overwhelming consensus is going to pop up a little bit and then go back down.
We've seen some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation, but that's not our view. Our experts believe, and the data shows, that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and are expected to be temporary.
17 Nobel laureates in economics sent me a letter recently saying that my proposals would actually reduce inflation. No one's talking about this great,
So wrong, President Biden. Your policies did not reduce inflation. Your Nobel laureates that were talking about you must have been in your pocket for some reason. They went out there and they were lying to the American people. Absolutely wrong, unfortunately. And if you were listening to them or you were advising them, I don't know which way that went, you need to reverse your policies for the sake of the United States of America, for the sake of the American people. The idea that you look at what's going on in Texas right now with problems with both wind and solar energy. The idea of not having energy in Texas would be like going to a Golden Corral buffet or something like that and starving. That's what it's like to not have energy in Texas. It'd be like being at a buffet and starving. And that's how ridiculous it is to not have energy in the United States of America. This can change. It should change. There are things that can be adjusted to change this. The Biden administration can work on so many things immediately, from what's going on with taxes on fuel, to taxes on big rig chassis, to what goes on in our ports and on rails, and to just painting a different direction for the United States of America in terms of what will be allowed for exploration, development, refinement of energy from sea to shining sea. It would make all the difference in the world if they would change that posturing. Want to switch gears to also what's going on today to travel abroad. Biden administration is traveling abroad right now. They're in the Middle East. Again, what goes on abroad in Saudi Arabia and with foreign relations, it absolutely matters. He talked about in his campaigning, he's going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state, to quote him. Not going to play a video of that, but that's what he talked about. Now he's going to go there and he's going to search for what's happening with, with trying to find other places to develop and get the tap turned on for more energy sources after going out there and blasting him during Saudi Arabia during the campaign. That's what's going on. It doesn't work in that way. He's going to urge them to ramp up production. I don't see it playing out in the way that he wants to do it, when we could be looking at places like Louisiana and Texas and other places to say, hey, let's make the regulatory environment better for people in the United States of America, for the XL pipeline, for things from sea to shining sea. Let's make it better for that. You don't need to travel to Saudi Arabia to work on fixing this. Let's start right in your own backyard, because that's where you can make the biggest difference. But again, unfortunately, we're not going to see that. So I want to give one more, basically something that I plan to talk about before we go into questions here. And that is just something very specific to what's going on back home. I talk to you all every single day. The Coast Guard study for what's going to take place for the management of the St. Lucie River Railroad Bridge. Please make sure that you go onto the Coast Guard. You can look at our QR code that we put up on the screen. Click that QR code, or not click it, scan that QR code and pull up the Coast Guard study and tell the Coast Guard how you believe that they should manage the St. Lucie River waterway. Again, in my opinion, they should be managing it for what goes on for our local mariners, making sure that our local mariners get access 45 minutes an hour, that they get increased access on weekends and holidays, that the Coast Guard is taking into consideration all of the safety issues that take place if you were to close down our waterway, as the trains want to take place for 45 minutes an hour. They want our water closed down for 45 minutes an hour. We as locals, we want it open for 45 minutes an hour. Water has the right of way. So tell the Coast Guard, don't ruin our beautiful Florida way of life, in my opinion, and in that. So let's start going to some of the questions that you all have. I know that after this, I have to get on another podcast for a couple minutes as a co-chair of the Cannabis Caucus. That's something that I forget the name of the podcast I'm getting on, but that's the next item of lineup after we do this. So let's go to a question here. Brian, can you explain what the Dems, and I see Joe in parentheses there, are doing with our oil to beg more from the Saudis to sell to China and use our reserves? Does he have to put that back? I think you're talking about the strategic petroleum reserves. Nice work on cleaning up the St. Lucie. Thank you. We're Floridians, right? We love water and weather, and we can keep our water pristine and beautiful. And let's make sure we do everything to do that. I'm going to do everything on my front to do that. But let's talk about what Joe Biden is doing. He tapped into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and those reserves went to other places. Now, my understanding of exactly how this takes place is, the administration left it to other agencies to go out there and say where they're going to send this. But an actively engaged president of the United States of America, in my opinion, he's not doing anything. So just answer, what is he doing? They're not doing anything. The biggest thing that is affecting every single American and every single business is inflation. And in my opinion, that starts with energy. That's the most available way to adjust inflation. If they're not working on that all day, every day, right now, until this is a problem that's fixed, then they're not doing right by the American people. If they're not sitting down and saying, what can we do here in Texas? What can we do here in Louisiana? What can we do here in South Dakota? What can we do to prepare for winter that will be coming down the road? That's not a Game of Thrones joke, but winter is coming, right? That'll be coming down the road. What can you do to prepare for that? What can you do for all these things? If they're not sitting down every single day preparing for this, then they're not doing right by the American people. And that's not what they're doing. To put a fine point on it, I believe yesterday the bulk of the president's schedule was consumed by speaking to social media influencers, not dealing with inflation, not speaking to oil executives, not to blame them or gas station owners or things like that, not dealing with that, not dealing with inflation, but speaking to social media influencers. They're not doing right because really fundamentally, they're against American oil exploration and production. They think that it's a vice. They think that you're wrong for driving an internal combustion engine. And that's the way they look at this. And the only reason, in my opinion, that they really care about this is because they care about it politically, not because they care that it's costing you more at the pump or that it's costing you more at the grocery store or the decisions that it's having to make you make in your life in a way that you otherwise shouldn't have when we are energy independent and actually able to export energy like under the Trump administration and have more than enough to meet our own needs. So let's go to another question here. Get the VA pay for our cannabis medicine. They do it in China. So number of things that I could talk about for VA and cannabis. Let's talk about a couple of things on that. National Defense Authorization Act, I spoke about that in the beginning. We're working on that right now. Has to do with all things military defense. There are a couple of provisions that we were working on in there to get through, and one of them is specifically to make sure that veterans have access to cannabis through the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, for me, let me, because, this is me answering questions. Let me tell you why I think this is so important. There are, whether it's 20 or 22 or 30 suicides a day or whatever that exact number might be, there are a lot of suicides from people that have served in the military. If cannabis can help subside that rate of suicide, then I'm all for it. Just as one easy thing to talk about. And it's not just for suicide, it's for people suffering from post-traumatic stress, from people that have, been diagnosed with cancer and under cancer treatments, you name it. There's a host of different reasons. But if it can make a difference, then let it make a difference. And that's the most simple place that I stand on it and what we work on. Decriminalizing it from the federal level is criminal at the federal level. So this is similar argument to Roe v. Wade. Let the states go out there and make their own decisions. Just like on abortion, let the states go out there and make their own decisions on cannabis as well. And that the federal government, get the federal government's hands out of it. So in my area, I have local representatives like Toby Overdorf and John Snyder and Dana Trabolsi and Senator Gail Harrell, right? Let them go out there and work in the state legislature and make decisions on these things instead of in Florida having people from New York and California and Michigan and other places make the decisions for Floridians on policy like this. I want to see it brought back home. There's another couple of other places that we can talk about, important places for cannabis legislation. If there's a place as, again, working on the Cannabis Caucus, if you have a cannabis card, you are unable to go out there and purchase and have firearms licenses, concealed carry licenses in the same way. That's a big deal. That's something that we're looking at trying to address right now, so that because you have a cannabis card, you don't have an ability or an inability rather to exercise your Second Amendment right. Well-regulated militia for the purpose of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, so that is not infringed for you because of a cannabis card. Or the Safe Banking Act, something else that went into the National Defense Authorization Act that we're working on right now as we speak. That's something that also went in there so that there can be safe banking for the cannabis industry instead of people being kicked out of being able to use Wells Fargo or JP Morgan Chase or whatever bank it is that somebody chooses to use, whether a local bank or a national bank or you name it. Without that Safe Banking Act, they're not able to conduct that banking in the way that allows for commerce to occur in the cannabis industry. So let's go. I hope I answered your question. I can't remember what the original question was. I pontificated a lot on that, but let's go to the next question. I hope I answered it. I'm sorry if I didn't. So I appreciate all that you're doing for clean water here in Stewart. Thank you. Although it's been hot as heck, the algae has not seemed as bad this year. So let's talk a little bit about algae. The algae is freshwater algae, all right? It's not saltwater algae. We, in our coastal estuaries where we boat and fish and eat meals on the water and have houses on the water, that's saltwater water. So unless the Corps of Engineers dumps so much fresh water out of Lake Okeechobee, which is what they do, that they turn our coastal saltwater estuary fresh, we really don't have those freshwater toxic blue-green algal blooms. Now, there are toxic blue-green algal blooms as we speak on Lake Okeechobee. They're suspended in the water column. I actually have a jar of that's one of my coins. I hope that wasn't too loud for you all. Sorry about that. This is a jar of toxic algae that I keep on my table on a regular basis just to talk to people about. So in that, there is algal blooms on Lake Okeechobee. They are suspended in the water column. They move from east to west with the wind. So if the wind is blowing towards the west, they'll largely be more over towards the west side of the lake. Likewise to the east side of the lake if the wind's blowing towards the east. And so largely they haven't been as much on the east coast right now, given some of the winds that they've been having on the lake. But they are there on the lake. If the Corps let the water get too high on the lake and they decided to start discharging that water, which I do everything I can to prevent, then we would see those toxic algal blooms released into our waterways. So I will do everything that I can to prevent that. And here's the simple statement I have on that. I look at it like a bathtub. I call it the tub test, like a bathtub with my kids. If you wouldn't put it in the bathtub with your kids, then don't put it into my water, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. If you wouldn't put it in the bath with one of your kids, don't think that you can dump it on my people, my neighbors, my restaurants, my businesses, my people that are out there building docks or fishing or anything else, because we will do everything that we can to stop you. So let's go to another question. So I'm being told, based upon time, this may be the last question. We'll see how quickly I answer this. Do you have the power to originate a bill to pass term limits in Congress? 100% I have the power to originate a bill to pass term limits in Congress. I have not written my own term limits bill myself. If I were to write it myself, I think I would probably author it in this way, that it would be 6 and 2, 6 House terms, which is, House terms are 2 years. So 6 House terms would look like 12 years in Congress, or 2 Senate terms. Senate terms are 6 years. So that would also look like 12 years serving the people if I were to author my own. That's what it would look like. However, I have co-sponsored, I don't know how many term limits bills out there. There's not an exact right answer to me. If we could get a term limits bill to the floor of the House of Representatives, whether it said 6 years or 3 years or 12 years or whatever, you would see me support that bill. I don't think it has to be this exact thing, this exact number, or else it's not going to get my support. I'm willing to look at just hopefully getting it to the floor. There was a number when I first came in Congress. There was actually a promise made. We were in the majority. I can remember this was a behind closed doors debate. The speaker told us that, yes, by, this is like a January conversation. By June, we promise we will bring that term limits bill to the floor of the House. And whether it passes or not, we will at least let you all have a vote on that term limits bill. Guess what? That term limits bill was never, whichever one it was at that time, was never brought to the floor of the House. And it could have been done. And here's the fact of the matter. This knife cuts both ways, right? So I have been in unified Republican government, Republican House of Representatives, Senate, and Republican president. Term limits bill was not brought to the floor of the House as much as I pushed for it, and many others did as well. I'm now in a unified Democrat government, right? Democrat House, Democrat Senate, and Democrat president. And likewise, they're not bringing a term limits bill to the floor of the House as well. I will give you my commitment. We move into the majority in the next cycle of Congress. And I will do everything that I can to bring any term limits bill, any that they'd be willing to bring to the floor, get it to the floor. And you will see my affirmative yes vote on that. So do we have time for one more? I guess we got time for one more question, and we'll go to that. Why did you go into politics? Question from Michael, 11 years old. So politics for me, I'm not going to pretend that it was something that I always paid the most attention to. I was a soldier. All I wanted to be was a soldier. I ultimately became a bomb technician in the military. I loved it, and I would still be doing it to this day. Now, if you back up and you say, fundamentally, what was my job? My job was defending my country, defending my brothers and sisters in arms, and specifically that oath, which is the same oath that I took as a member of Congress, support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. This is my commitment to my country, a commitment that I nearly gave my life for, that I would still give my life for willingly to this day, and that many gave their lives for both while I was in service with them and before me. I believe in that oath, and I believe in this place, and I believe that it is worth defending. And if service would have taken my life, my wife would have known that for me, it would have been without regret, just like the loss of both of my legs and my left index finger and other damage to my body. It's without regret because of what I was serving. So how did that lead me into politics? When I was injured, it was there was a lot of emotional moments about laying in a hospital bed when I was injured. And one of those emotional things that I had to deal with was I'd lost my purpose in life, potentially. My job was defending all of these things, and I lost that. And for any of us, if we lose our purpose in life, I don't know what could be more devastating than losing whatever it is that our purpose is, that the reason that we get up each and every day. And so my father, he's at my bedside. I've told this story many times. Dad and I, we love each other, but we're just not those two guys that go around saying that we love each other. But he came to my bedside, tells me how much he loves me and how much he's glad that I'm okay. And then he gives me a tough life lesson. He said, Brian, you can't let this keep you down. You got to find a way to pull yourself up. Get yourself out there, get back to work. You can't let your kids see you sitting on your butt, regardless of what happens to you in life, because your kids will always be looking at you, trying to figure out how to live their life. Make sure the best defense that you give your country is not something that's in your past, right? These are lessons that my dad gave me in probably the most difficult time that he had to speak to me about anything. So trying to live up to that, I'm laying in that hospital bed saying, how can I make sure the best defense that I give this country that I love is not behind me, but still in front of me. And I'm laying in the hospital, and I decided, you know what? Maybe my community will let me go out there and be in a battle of words and ideas and ideology in the direction of our country as a representative in the House of Representatives. And that's how I came to it. I went from being from being in combat to being in Congress. And I can tell you, maybe we'll answer this another day. There's a lot of things that I take from combat to Congress in terms of lessons about leadership and things that I learned being in the military. And maybe we'll talk about that another day. But we got to end this YouTube live for this one. But that is how I got into the political world, was just trying to say, how do I make sure that the best defense that I give my country is not something that's in my past, but still every single day in my future? And my hope for being your representative is that every single day, the best defense that I give our country is still in my future. I hope it's tomorrow. I hope the defense I give our country tomorrow is better than what I gave today, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And please hold me to that. Make sure that the best that I give is each and every day in front of me. Hold all of your representatives, all of your people in government to that. Hold their feet to the fire, no pun intended, but hold their feet to the fire. So in that, as always, you want to know when these live Q&As are, like and subscribe. We try to do them every single week that we're here in Washington, just to answer your questions about anything and everything. There are no holds barred. You want to ask a question, personal, policy, politics, legislative, let us know, and I'll try to answer your question. If we didn't get to it today, call our office. We'll try to get back to you with questions that you all asked in the chat there. Email our office, write a letter into the office, you name it, and we will get back to you. Give a couple other quick plugs here. You have anything that is affecting you in life, you don't like that you had to wait 2 rings on the phone to call whatever government agency, let our office know, and we'll try to get them on the phone quicker. There's nothing too small, nothing too large for us to try to deal with, and we'll do everything that we can to help you all. That is the number one thing that we do, be that go-between between you and whatever federal agency might be harassing you or a thorn in your side in your life, and try to alleviate that. So in that, as always, honored to serve you. Thank you all for liking, subscribing, paying attention and watching. And I wish you all the best. You all take care.